Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the kickoff of our book, Winning with People, John Maxwell. I'm Eilers-Heffner. You probably all know that. And I'm excited. I listened. So thankfully, Melissa found this book and him talking about it on YouTube. So I was like, oh, this is perfect to kind of be listening to and hearing him, go through these principles was super cool. So that was great. And then, going through the book too, right? It's like double duty and lots to get out of it. Um, I like that he talks about in the introduction, like excellent people skill, like a people person is someone who has excellent people skills, connects easily with people, makes us feel good about ourselves, lifts us to a higher level, and then interactions with them create a positive experience that makes us want to spend more time with them. And I'm like, well, that is great. Like, I'm sure we all have someone that comes to mind when we read those words. And then also, I feel like it's just such a great goal that we can be like that so that people want to spend more time with us so that we can help them in their journey, their health journey, their business journey, whatever that looks like. And just in general, right? Like having deep and good, meaningful relationships and friendships, how we're treating our spouse, our children. So that was good. So anyway, getting into the chapters where he has the readiness question for are we prepared for relationships, right? I thought that was really interesting. Again, a lot of kind of self-reflection, looking at, what things we can control growing up and then moving into adulthood, what things can't we control and how do we react to those situations is always so important. Um, you know, he talks about just really deepening those relationships and goes through each of the categories that he wants to talk about in this book and things like that. So, what we want to ask ourselves is, what is my perception of others? And I thought that was really interesting. Like, I think we always, I don't know, I think it's easy to have multiple perceptions of different people in different situations, right? Like in this situation, it's kind of that stereotypical tendencies, right? And so just reminding ourselves of that and not falling into that trap. But then also the lens principle of who we are determines how we see others. So, like, we really have to be careful of our lens or be aware of our lens so that we can react appropriately in situations and with relationships. So, he does bring up again, like not expecting people to follow us just because we're in a leadership position, right? Making sure that we have that relationship to back up our leadership position and making sure we are being good leaders and doing what we say and all of that. So, he talked about the story of the new guy moving into town and saying, oh, what are the people like in this town? And well, what were the people like in your old town? Oh, they're crabby and angry and blah, blah, blah. Oh, everyone's here the same, right? And I thought that was actually really kind of funny. Like he was making a point. But no, I'm like, how would you ever answer that question like that, right? Oh, they're the same. But the person that's like, oh, we had great relationships. We had so much fun with our neighbors. We loved blah, 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 our community. We're going to miss them so much. Oh, you're going to find the same thing here, right? And it really, and we all know those people too. We know those people that are just so negative about everything that there's just like, you almost can't help them because they're so negative. Um, but the way that we see others is a reflection. So am I a trusting person? Then I'm going to see trusting people. If I'm a critical person, I'm going to see other people as critical. If I'm a caring person, I'm going to see other people as compassionate. And so I think it really is just this like almost film that we have over us, like a lens. We have this lens of negativity, a lens of criticalness, a lens of poor self-esteem. Like we're going to see the world with that. And it really does impact our day to day. And I think it could be very miserable. So our personal frame of reference is consisting of our attitudes, assumptions, and expectations. And then concerning ourselves with other people in life. So this is going to determine if we're optimistic or pessimistic, cheerful, gloomy, trusting, suspicious, friendly or reserved, or brave or timid. So, and I think too, we need to remind ourselves that this stuff is influenceable. Like we can say, well, I'm afraid of being cold. I hate being cold. I don't like being cold. So what have I been working on? Putting myself in a situation to be uncomfortable, to get over it. You know, I know no harm is going to come to me. It's kind of a dumb example, I guess, but you know, I'm not really a person that loves heights. Like I probably will never skydive. Um, but if I in a smaller scale, I could do things that could help me be brave in that situation, right? Where I liked how we talked, the woman was like, oh, where I live right now is my favorite place to ever live. And it wasn't, oh, this is really, no, it's like, have a good attitude. Like, this is my favorite place. And I keep reminding myself of that with starting this new job. And I'm like, this is my favorite job ever. So I just keep telling myself that because I can't immediately change the situation. I am pretty committed with a year contract. Otherwise, I'm paying them money back or whatever. So it's like, I love this job. This is my favorite job. It's my favorite job. And then Plexus is my favorite job, really, for right now. But this is my favorite PT job, right? Then moving on to who you are determines what you do. So this reminded me of like the strength-based leadership book, right? Like playing in our strengths, doing what we are created to do, and being who God created us to be, because the barnyard animals that were all put in different like roles, they all failed. It's like expecting, you know, a fish to climb a tree. You can't judge a fish on how well it can climb a tree. That's not what it was designed to do. So, and then he had a lot of stock in genetics, which I thought was really interesting because I have seen contrary research that yes, genetics do play a role, but a lot of our lifestyle, our environment, our personal growth, that has a huge impact too in our outcomes. And so I was surprised that he put that much stock into genetics, but I also don't have adopted children, so I can't speak for that, right? So he was comparing it to self-image. Again, this is something we can influence and improve. And it really does kind of make sense. Like if I'm not proud of myself and happy with who I am, like how am I going to help anybody do anything? Right? Like it really is pretty true. Our life experiences. So people respond to what they're prepared to believe. I was like, that's interesting. Like, how can we not behave like that too, right? Like I don't want to only respond based on what I am in my narrow scope prepared to believe. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to understand. I want to engage in that, right? So I feel like that's influenceable too. But just our life experience does shape a lot of who we are. Our attitudes and choices about those experiences, though, is highly impactful in determining who we are. And then friends. So we've seen the post come up a lot again lately. It's resurfaced, like the 5 people that you hang out with. If you hang out with 5 readers, you're going to be the 6. If you hang out with 5 athletes, you're going to be the 6. If you hang out with 5, whatever, you're going to be the 6. But if you hang out with 5 smokers, you're going to be the 6. That can go either way. And then also kind of like, you know, we want to help our kids have good friendships because we know how influential that is on them. And, you know, not that we're trying to ruin their lives, we really are trying to protect them and guide them. But it comes with parenting. It comes with those early ages and discussing like what to look for in a friend and how we can be a good friend. And if you're a good friend, you're going to have good friends, right? All of that. And so definitely we are careful about, you know, the friendship piece, I think for ourselves as adults, but even when we're raising our kids and protecting them. The mirror principle, I think this one was really my favorite. Just that really examining ourselves, huge self-awareness, making sure we're not kind of, he talked about this a lot in the Rob Sperry book, like we're not falling into victimhood, we're not falling into survivor we're really working on being a conqueror, right? And if you really don't believe in yourself, then you're going to sabotage relationships. So relationships and anything else that you're setting your mind to. So being honest with ourselves and not letting that victimhood come up, right? Like really looking, taking a step back, looking in the mirror, seeing what really is there. And how can you lead people if you just really don't like or respect them? Like the guy who kept calling everyone a dingaling. And then he's like, well, you're the biggest dingling around here. You're the problem, right? Like, but just truly, and I think didn't Fallon used to say that she just didn't think that she liked people. And then she realized like she had to really like self-reflect on that and go, no, I do like people. I like helping people and like really enveloped in that. And then she was more successful in being a leader and growing a team. So then we can work on ourselves, change ourselves first, because then we can make that impact out in our family, our world, our city, our state, and into the world versus I'm going to go change the world and then realize, oh, this isn't going to happen. But it's almost also those compounding disciplines, those compounding things, the compounding self-reflection, and working on the next thing that we want to work on in ourselves. Self-responsibility. I like that he tied this into that no greatness happens alone, that like we definitely don't go diamond alone. We don't go ruby alone. We don't go gold alone. A lot of people have gone gold alone with the people that have signed up with them, but we don't move on to those higher levels of leadership. And then of course, just in life, right? Like we don't really have this satisfying life unless we're doing things with our team, with our family. And so I lost my place on my notes. And it comes from vision of one person. So the vision of our family, the vision of what we want our day-to-day to look like with our family, what do we want our team to look like, and really casting that vision. We talk about that all the time, casting vision. I like how he like physically saw a mirror that said, what you see is what the customer sees. And I love that we can do more with social media so easily, like doing the stories and just like talk for 30 seconds so that people see us as a real person. But of course, not just like laying in the bed, like triple chin positioning, like, hi, everybody. Like, we've seen people do that. They look sad and depressed and they're not portraying like, oh, I really want to go hang out with that person, right? So we have this opportunity, not that we don't have moments where we maybe feel like that, but that's not the time you go live on your stories, right? So having truly this like way for people to see us and see the real us, I think is super cool. And then having better relationships means bettering ourselves, working on ourselves, working on our communication, all of that. The pain principle really talks about how hurting people hurt people. And he's like, we should really try to help these people. And, but sometimes they don't want to be helped. So all we can do is, what we can do. But hurting people, and this, I think we can all think of this, like I'm sure when you read this, you're like, oh yeah, like hurting people are less willing to change, less willing to admit failure, less willing to discuss issues, less willing to learn from others, less willing to do something about the problem. They're carrying a lot of baggage. There's that victimhood, the negativity, yeah. And then healthy people want to make change. They're more willing to admit failure. They're willing to discuss issues. They're willing to learn from others and those mistakes. They're willing to learn from their own mistakes too, right? Willing to do something about the problem, and they're able to travel light. So I thought that was just a really good reminder, not taking it personally, always important. We definitely cannot control how other people treat us, but we can control how we treat them. And it doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries, but you can have a boundary and say, I can see that you're not in a good mood today, and I'm really sorry about that. And I'd love to hang out with you and encourage you and have a good time, but I can't be treated poorly, so I'm going to have to leave, right? Like, or whatever. You can have boundaries and you can still be kind and definitely respond in a loving way to horrible situations. So just looking and just recognizing that. And I mean, I've said this over and over, like I always try to be nice to everyone, no matter how that they're treating me. And it's not my job to determine how they treat me. It's my job to treat them how I should be treating them, how my standard is for treating other people. So anyway, and not adding to someone's hurt, I don't know, this isn't really on this topic, but sort of. My daughter and I, the oldest one, watched 27 Dresses a little while ago, and I told Jackie about this. I'm like, I hadn't watched it in years and years and years. And I'm like, it's a great, like, watch it with Taylor. Like, this is really good. Like, because it's not a horrible movie. Like, it's pretty clean, right? And the end has such a good lesson. I'm like, oh, look, that is a good friend, because she called her friend out on her behavior and said, if you had done the right thing, you would feel better right now. You wouldn't be feeling horrible about yourself. And I was like, no, that's a good friend. One, she was there and saying like, hey, you didn't make a good choice. Hey, I'm still your friend and I'm here to pick up your pieces, but really calling her out on it too. I just thought it was such a good lesson. And she was hurting and she definitely took it out instead of dealing with the hurt properly. So anyway, great all around. And then let's see, I think that's all that I kind of had, except you like the self-reflection too of if I am hurting, like, am I prepared to work through those issues and go beyond that pain, go beyond that hurt. So self-reflecting there and seeing what we can do about that ourselves, recognizing and wanting to move past it. I feel like I'm ending on such a downer. So hopefully you guys have really good things to say.
So I think this book is really good. Um, it had a lot of things in there that I didn't necessarily always think about. Like we have a new principal coming to school, or he just started, and on staff there's always, or with families or kids, there's always some that always seem to be the problem. The problem, yeah. And you're like, oh, you kind of want to warn people and have them be forewarned. But then I was thinking about, what he said in there. It's like, ooh, are they the problem or is something else the problem? Or if I'm pointing out all of the other problems with people, am I the problem? So I thought that those were really good reminders. And we can think about that with our team and different stuff too, or people that we're coaching of, yeah, this person's so difficult, blah, blah, blah. Well, is that person really that difficult or are you not approaching it great? Are you the problem in a way? Is it the way you're approaching things? So I think that this was really good. I think this is another really good one that my kids should read. Um, but yeah, I thought it was great. So thanks, Elizabeth.
This is related and unrelated, but this is reminding me of this quote that I keep seeing all the time about like emotional maturity and communication maturity is knowing that not everything needs to be said. Not everything needs to be said right now, and not everything needs to be said by you. So if you are dealing with something where like you need to communicate with somebody or you are noticing something, maybe that's not something you need to point out, whether it's coaching or a conflict with a friend or a partner or whoever it is. You don't have to say everything you're thinking, and you definitely, sometimes it doesn't need to be said by you at all. And then maybe just right now is not the right time. So anyway, I just always think that's a good lesson that's related and unrelated to what we're talking about.
I think that's really good. Very important. I think we've kind of talked about over the years too, Lauren and Jackie and stuff. I think that the biggest time that it becomes our responsibility though is when we're coaching our downline and they're struggling with something, and if we aren't helping them see it because it is something standing in the way of their business, right, or their success, or I mean honestly we're all friends. Like was thinking about as I was even preparing, I'm like, I'm so blessed and glad that I have people to work with that I like we have such a good team. And so it would be terrible if we like, oh, I don't really like that girl, right? Like it's not like that at all. And so we definitely do have that responsibility as a leader if something really is, and also the timing of it, right? Like making sure it's a good time to talk about something that can be hard to talk through.
It took me a while to understand the concept and the idea that hurting people hurt people. And when I did finally learn that, it was a big eye opener because there are times, people will lash out at you and you're like, what did I do? What did I say? I don't understand. Was it me? And having that in the back of your mind that hurting people hurt people allows you to, okay, what else is going on? And he kind of explains that a little bit, that what is it? You have to take a step back and go, is there something going on in their life that they're reacting over here, but it's directed at me at the moment? And that's been a big help for me. And I have a very specific example that happened just around the 4th of July on one of my construction projects. 2 young, impressionable workers for my team just doing their job, inspecting. But the contractor was rude, unprofessional, yelling, on and on and on, just berating them. And at the time, one, I had to say, you guys don't need to take that. If it's not related to your job and how you're not performing, you step back and say, you don't treat me like that, stop. And then I had to step in and say, no, this is a job site. You need to be professional about that. And as we learn more about the situation, he was dealing with stuff in his personal life and he was reacting at work. And yeah, it's a big lesson. And I'm so glad that I finally understood that hurting people hurt people. Switching topics completely, I thought it was very interesting, the Pete Rose story about baseball and all of the wonderful statistics and how he was such an awesome athlete in the sport of baseball, and how he was blinded by baseball and didn't realize that he had a gambling problem. So just another thing where, sometimes we don't see our faults, and it takes a person of courage and willing to do some self-reflection and evaluation to understand, oh, maybe I do have a problem in this area of my life that is impacting other areas. So my takeaways.
Oh, I love it. I'm glad you were there for your young workers too, to kind of help them, I mean, that's a tough situation when you're young and starting your career and things, to be like, oh my gosh, this older guy is like yelling at me. I should probably listen, and I must be doing something terrible and whatever. So that was really good that you could help both parties there. And that was very emotionally mature of you, because I would be like, stop yelling at my guys. Like, come on, guys, let's move on. I don't know how patient I would be in that situation. I think, and our kids do this all the time, right? Like, did anything happen at school today? Can you tell me what happened? Oh, who'd you sit with at lunch? Like, you have to start asking questions, because they're like, I this and that, and you're stupid. I mean, not that my kids don't call me stupid usually, but you're mean, you're never cook anything good, whatever, just going off. And it's like, what's going on? What happened? Are you this hungry? Like, what's going on? So, and I think even if I get in a mood, right? Okay, Elizabeth, what is going on here? Like, are you upset about something? It's just kind of that self-reflection. Do you need to eat? Do you need an active? Maybe you need to go to bed early. Like, we can self-reflect on where we're at, and then go, okay, I need to go take a minute. And that's a big thing too, is when I was younger and like a new PT, and if a situation, like I would just like bottle it all in and suck it up and like keep pushing through, right? And try not to say anything sassy and get through the situation, where now I'd say, I mean, I did this to a patient. She was so crabby, and gosh, she was crabby. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to let you breathe for a minute. And you're just gonna rest. And I walked away and she was safe. She was not unsafe to do that. And I was like, she was gonna literally drive me up a wall. I was gonna like go off on her. And so I walked away and she's like, in other words, shut up. And in my head, I'm like, yep. And I just kept walking. I got a drink of water. Tracy, you probably were, it was on rehab. You probably were there at the time. And it just, like learning how to work ourselves through those situations too, and dealing with it and knowing what we need to still have a positive relationship with somebody else. So really interesting.
Sure, we're in. Oops, I forgot, I'm not pregnant. Governor Diane Washington. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
27-minute book club, y'all.
When a meteor crashed into our dear city. That meteorite didn't just make a whole.
I do that too, Elizabeth. I internalize a lot of things and process it and overanalyze it over and over and over in my mind. And thank goodness for spouses. They're meant to be with you for a reason. My wife can read me like an open book, and she'll know when I'm dealing with something, and she has that gentle way of first allowing me to process a little bit, and then the small simple questions to just start drawing it out, and the patience to say, all right, he'll talk about it when he's ready. So that's one thing, that a skill I'd like to work on is how to draw someone out when you can see that they're really struggling with something.
Oh, you have a very sweet wife. I mean, I would say ask more questions, right? Like we do with our kids. And it doesn't have what happened at work today. It's like, oh, who'd you eat lunch with? Did you go out? How was your sandwich? Like just get talking, and then I think comes out. Jason's gotten a lot better at like talking that out instead of just being grumpy in general, like if something happens. So he's like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm like, no, like talk. If you need to get it out. Me, on the other hand, as Jackie knows, don't have trouble talking my feelings out for sure. It's what I do, and I don't have anyone to talk to and vent to, like how I can calm down. And I've gotten so much better at it.
I'm definitely a talker too. Like we both get home from work and I will just be able to vent and talk about everything for the day. It depends on who I'm with, but definitely with Marcus. But then he is like a Jason or a Steve and bottles it up and doesn't really say anything, and he's just grumpy. And it used to drive me up a wall to the point where it would like start arguments, because I'm like, I know something's wrong, just tell me what's wrong. And he just didn't want to talk about it. So some people, yes, like asking them questions, but that actually made him more upset. If I were to ask him questions and say, like, how was your day? Like he hates that question still. And so you just have to figure out with each person. Everybody communicates differently, right? So some people want you to ask so that they have somebody to talk to about it. And then some people you have to, kind of like Elizabeth said, ask about other things. Like, what did you eat for lunch today? And just get them talking about other stuff and knowing that you're a safe place to land. And then eventually they start opening up too. So just learning, everybody's different. And just because we want to communicate a certain way doesn't mean somebody else does. And it doesn't mean that they don't love us and they don't trust us. It just means that that's not how they communicate. So it's all a learning process.
It's kind of like it with kids. If they're upset, you can't just be like, what's upsetting you? Like I just started asking them. I read it somewhere like, oh, did anything gross happen at school today? Did anything funny happen at school today? Did anything crazy happen? Did anything unexpected happen? Like giving them not just how was your day? How was school? And honestly, like the kids are so sweet. When I worked at the hospital, they'd be like, how was your day? What did you do? I'm like, the same thing again. Like it wasn't, I mean, sometimes I would have interesting cases and things that I would want to talk about, but it had become so familiar. It wasn't like, I'm like, I already lived it. I don't want, it's like playing life. Try playing life with your children. I am like, no, this is my life. I have to make these decisions every day. I don't want to pay bills in a game. Like, can you please find something else? So, yeah, getting the talking, I think, is the key. And then the stuff comes out. It was a few months ago, my oldest she was upset and she called Jason and not me. And I was like, I can't believe she called you. Why didn't she call me? And I asked her, like, why didn't you call me? And she's like, well, I knew you were at work. So I called Daddy. I was like, oh, good. I'm really glad that you did. And then it took a while, like a week or two, before she like told me everything. And then we talked for like 3 hours and we're in the car in the garage. Jason's like, are you coming in the house? I'm like, no, we're talking.
I listened to something recently. It was a therapist, like a counselor kind of therapist, not PT, OT. And he was talking about, how people come in and just want to vent and, how people communicate differently. But he's like, when I have people that are like so worked up about things and have lots to say, like I first, make them pause and have 5 questions to like ask them what they last ate and drank, like what they slept, how their sleep was, like I don't remember what the other ones were, but just like their basic needs and how just it really impacts your mood and what you're doing and your perception of it all too. Because definitely when I'm hungry and it's dinner time and everyone's, wanting food and all the things, like I am definitely gonna have a very different perception versus when dinner's prepped and ready and we've eaten and all is good.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I remember growing up, my mom would be making dinner and I'd be like, I'm so hungry. And no, you can't eat. You can't eat. Like we couldn't have anything. And now if my kids are like that, I am like, have an apple, have an half an apple. Let me make you half an apple. Eat some carrot sticks. Like, right? Because if they're that, like, I don't need them fighting and bickering because then I can't make dinner because I got to go like deal with that. So I would rather them eat something. And honestly, like, me acknowledge that they have that need right then. I think it's tricky when they're really little, but my kids are big, so they're going to eat a whole plate of food. If they eat a half an apple, they're not going to ruin their dinner. I remember being old enough, like, to not ruin my dinner with half an apple and like, no, you can't eat. We're making dinner. I'm like, I'm so hungry. So even in high school, like, go run 6 miles and come home and I'm starving. Like, and I was scrawny. Like Ella comes in for money. I'm like, you want to eat something? Eat this while I finish dinner. Anyway, there's some coughing for you. All right, you guys ready to go to bed? Finish your IPA. Tomorrow's the last day of the dollar sale. And then back to school event and detox challenge. So great time to follow up with people and get them started for the detox challenge. So I'm excited. Who's going for pickleball? That's good. Me too. I think my kids would have fun playing it.